They seemed like the perfect American family. A successful businessman, his devoted wife, and their two bright children living the dream in a quiet Colorado town. But behind the white picket fence and Sunday dinners, someone was orchestrating a slow, methodical murder. This is the story of Martha Henderson and the unthinkable crime that shocked a nation. Boulder, Colorado. 1998, the Western family had everything. Richard Western, 45, was a regional manager for a telecommunications company. His wife, Patricia, 42, volunteered at the local library and ran a small catering business from home. Their children, Jessica, 16, and Michael, 14, were honor students and athletes. The Westerns were well-loved in their community. Richard coached Little League. Patricia organized charity bake sales. They were the neighbors everyone wanted to have, which is why what happened to them was so devastating. Detective Sarah Martinez, the lead investigator on this case, would later describe them as the family everyone aspired to be. But in the summer of 1998, the Western family hired someone who would change their lives forever. They hired Martha Henderson as their live-in housekeeper. Martha Henderson was, by all accounts, invisible. She was the kind of person you'd pass on the street and never notice. And that's exactly what made her so dangerous. Forensic psychologist Dr. James Kellerman examined Martha's profile extensively and concluded that her ordinariness was her greatest weapon. Martha Henderson arrived at the Wester household in June 1998. She was 38 years old, recently divorced, and claimed to have extensive experience in domestic work. What the Westerns didn't know was that Martha's previous employment history was built on lies. Linda Morrison, one of Martha's former employers, recalled that Martha had worked for her family for about 3 months before they let her go. Things kept going missing, small things, jewelry, cash. But they could never prove it was her. Martha had this way of making people feel guilty for even suspecting her. Martha's background check appeared clean. No criminal record, no red flags. But investigators would later discover she had worked under different names in at least 4 states, leaving a trail of suspicious incidents behind her. When Martha arrived at the Western home with a single suitcase, Patricia greeted her warmly at the door. "You must be Martha. Welcome, please come in. Let me show you to your room," Patricia said with genuine kindness. Martha responded softly, deferentially, "Thank you, Mrs. Western. I'm so grateful for this opportunity." For the first few weeks, Martha was the perfect employee. She cleaned meticulously, cooked elaborate meals, and always stayed in the background. Patricia Western would later say Martha was almost too good to be true. Those words would prove prophetic. In late July, barely 6 weeks after Martha's arrival, Richard Western started feeling ill. Dr. Robert Shun, the Western family physician, remembered that Richard came to see him complaining of persistent nausea, stomach cramps, and fatigue. His symptoms were consistent with the stomach virus. Dr. Chun prescribed rest and fluids. Richard seemed to improve after a few days, so they both assumed it had passed. But the symptoms returned, and this time they were worse. At dinner one evening, Richard told his wife weakly, "Patricia, I don't think I can eat tonight. My stomach is killing me." Jessica, concerned for her father, urged him to seek medical attention. "Dad, you've been sick for weeks. Maybe you should go to the hospital." But Martha appeared from the kitchen with a bowl of soup, her voice full of false concern. "Mr. Western, I made your favorite soup. Just a little bit might help settle your stomach." What no one knew was that Martha had already begun her deadly plan. Small amounts of arsenic trioxide, a tasteless, odorless poison, were being added to Richard's food and drinks. Arsenic poisoning is insidious. In small doses, it mimics common illnesses, flu, food poisoning, gastritis. By the time symptoms become severe, the victim has already accumulated significant amounts of the toxin in their body. And Martha was patient, methodical. She would poison Richard slowly, carefully, making sure no one suspected anything but natural illness. By September 1998, Richard Western's condition had drastically deteriorated. He had lost 30 pounds. His hair was falling out in clumps. He could barely work. Patricia would later recall, her voice trembling with emotion, how she watched her husband waste away before her eyes. The doctors ran every test imaginable. They thought it might be cancer, then Crohn's disease, then chronic fatigue syndrome. Nothing made sense. Meanwhile, Martha had expanded her targets. Patricia began experiencing similar symptoms: nausea, dizziness, burning sensations in her hands and feet. One afternoon, Patricia struggled to stand at the kitchen counter. Martha helped her to a chair, playing the role of concerned caregiver perfectly. "Mrs. Western, you're pushing yourself too hard. Let me handle dinner tonight." "You should rest," Martha said. Patricia, confused and frightened, replied, "I don't understand what's wrong with me. First Richard, now this." Martha's response was calculated to deflect suspicion. "Maybe it's something in the house. Mold, perhaps. I'll clean everything thoroughly." Martha's deflection tactics were masterful. She suggested environmental causes, stress, even spiritual explanations, anything to divert suspicion away from the one common denominator: the food she prepared. In October, the unthinkable happened. Jessica and Michael Western started showing symptoms. Detective Martinez believed this was when Martha made her critical mistake. She got greedy, or perhaps she thought she needed to eliminate the entire family to avoid suspicion. Either way, when the children got sick, people started asking questions. At school, the nurse became increasingly concerned about Jessica. "Jessica, honey, this is the third time this week. I'm calling your mother," the nurse said. Jessica, pale and trembling, replied, "I feel like I'm going to throw up. And my legs, they hurt so much." Jessica's symptoms were alarming. Not just nausea, but neurological issues. Numbness, difficulty walking, memory problems. Dr. Samantha Rodriguez, a pediatric neurologist, examined Jessica and was immediately concerned. She thought it might be multiple sclerosis or Guillain-Barré syndrome. Jessica's nerve conduction tests showed significant abnormalities, but the pattern didn't quite fit any known disease. Michael's symptoms were different, but equally troubling. Severe abdominal pain, vision problems, and episodes where he would become confused and disoriented. By November 1998, all 4 members of the Western family were seriously ill. Richard had been hospitalized twice. Patricia could barely function. The children were missing weeks of school. And then, someone finally asked the right question. Dr. Melissa Hartford, an emergency room physician, was treating Richard when he was brought in again, this time with seizures. She was reviewing his chart when she noticed the pattern. He'd been sick for months, and now his entire family was showing similar symptoms. That's extremely unusual for genetic or environmental diseases. Dr. Hartford ordered toxicology screenings. What she found would crack the case wide open. The levels were astronomical. Richard had over 50 times the normal amount of arsenic in his blood. Patricia's levels were almost as high. The children had elevated levels as well. The diagnosis was clear: the Western family was being poisoned. Once police confirmed arsenic poisoning, they had to determine the source. Was it in the water, the walls, the food? And most importantly, was it accidental or intentional? Detective Martinez and her team tested everything in that house: water, paint, soil samples, cleaning products. Nothing showed dangerous arsenic levels except for one thing: the food in the refrigerator. They found arsenic in the chicken soup, the meatloaf, even the coffee grounds. Someone was systematically contaminating the family's food supply. All eyes turned to Martha Henderson, the only person who had access to the food and the only one in the household who wasn't sick. When detectives interviewed Martha, she was calm. Too calm. She expressed concern for the family, offered to help in any way she could. But she never seemed surprised or frightened by the news that they'd been poisoned. That stood out to investigators. Detectives began digging into Martha's background. What they discovered was chilling. Martha Henderson wasn't who she claimed to be. Her real name was Martha Louise Schaefer, and she had a history that stretched across multiple states and multiple identities. FBI agent Thomas Wright from the Behavioral Analysis Unit discovered that Martha had worked in at least 7 households over the previous 10 years. In 3 of those homes, someone had died under mysterious circumstances. In 1991, while working for the Morrison family in Oregon, the elderly patriarch died suddenly of what was ruled natural causes. Martha inherited $15,000 from his will. In 1994, a wealthy widow in Nevada died, while Martha was employed as her caregiver. Again, Martha received money, this time $8,000 and several pieces of jewelry. The pattern was clear. Martha would ingratiate herself with families, particularly those with money. She'd gain their trust, manipulate the situation, and in some cases, investigators believe she killed for financial gain. When police searched Martha's room in the Western house, they found a collection of personal items belonging to the family. Patricia's earrings, Richard's cufflinks, photographs of the children, and hidden in a locked box under her bed, a bottle of arsenic trioxide. But why the Western family? What had they done to deserve such cruelty? From a psychological perspective, Martha Henderson displayed classic traits of a serial poisoner. These individuals often experience feelings of powerlessness in their own lives. Poisoning gives them control, dominance. They enjoy watching their victims suffer while maintaining a facade of care and concern. Investigators discovered that Martha had expected to be included in the Western family's will. She had subtly suggested this to Patricia, claiming she had nowhere else to go and considered them her family. Patricia later recalled how Martha played on her sympathy. She told stories about being abandoned, about having no one. Patricia actually felt sorry for her. She never imagined Martha was planning to kill them all. But there was something darker at play. Diary entries found in Martha's belongings revealed an obsession with the Western family, particularly with replacing Patricia as the mother and wife. In her own handwriting, Martha had written, "They don't appreciate her. Patricia is weak. She doesn't deserve them. I would be a better wife, a better mother. If she were gone, Richard would see that. The children would see that." Martha Henderson wasn't just a killer. She was delusional, believing she could eliminate Patricia and seamlessly take her place. On November 18, 1998, police obtained a warrant for Martha Henderson's arrest. Two detectives approached Martha in the Western kitchen where she was preparing food. "Martha Henderson, you're under arrest for 4 counts of attempted murder and 1 count of possession of a controlled substance with intent to harm," they announced. Martha's response was chilling in its calmness. "I have no idea what you're talking about. I've only ever helped this family." Even in custody, Martha maintained her innocence. But the evidence against her was overwhelming. Police found her fingerprints on the arsenic bottle. They had the contaminated food. They had her diary. And when they exhumed bodies from 2 of the previous deaths she'd been connected to, they found arsenic in their remains. Martha Henderson had been killing for years, and she very nearly succeeded in wiping out the entire Western family. The trial of Martha Henderson began in May 1999. It was one of the most sensational cases in Colorado history. Prosecutor David Chambers knew this wasn't just about proving she poisoned the Westerns. They had to demonstrate the pattern, the premeditation, the absolute coldness with which she operated. The prosecution presented a mountain of evidence. The arsenic found in her possession, toxicology reports, testimony from previous employers, and the damning diary entries. On the witness stand, Patricia Western, visibly emotional, pointed at Martha Henderson and said, "That's her. Martha Henderson. I trusted her with my children's lives, and she tried to murder us all." Martha's defense team argued that she was mentally ill, that she couldn't distinguish right from wrong. But psychiatric evaluations told a different story. Martha knew exactly what she was doing. She was careful, deliberate, and cunning. She understood consequences. She just didn't care. That's not insanity. That's sociopathy. On July 12, 1999, after 3 days of deliberation, the jury returned with their verdict. The judge asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman stood and replied, "We have, Your Honor. On all counts of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty." Martha Henderson was also convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder for the deaths in Oregon and Nevada. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. When a verdict was read, Martha didn't react. No tears, no emotion. She just sat there, staring straight ahead. It was chilling. The Western family survived, but their lives were forever changed. Patricia spoke about how Richard was never the same. The arsenic damaged his kidneys and liver. He struggled with health problems until he passed away in 2015 from organ failure, a delayed result of the poisoning. Jessica and Michael, who received lower doses of arsenic, recovered physically but carried emotional scars. Trauma counselor Andrea Brooks explained the profound violation the family experienced. Can you imagine? Someone you trusted, someone in your home, slowly killing you and your family. That kind of betrayal creates deep, lasting trauma. Patricia Western never hired another housekeeper. She sold the family home and moved to a different state, trying to build a new life away from the memories. Today, Martha Henderson, now 64 years old, remains in the Colorado Women's Correctional Facility. She has never shown remorse. She has never apologized. According to Warden Elizabeth Santos, Martha is a model prisoner in many ways. She follows rules, doesn't cause trouble, but she also refuses to discuss her crimes. In 25 years, she's never admitted guilt. Investigators believe there may be other victims, other families, other deaths that were attributed to natural causes but may have been murder. Agent Wright stated that they've identified at least 6 suspicious deaths connected to households where Martha worked. But without exhumations and evidence, we may never know the full extent of her crimes. The case of Martha Henderson reminds us that evil can wear the most ordinary face. It can sit at our dinner tables, sleep under our roofs, and smile while plotting our destruction. The Western family trusted Martha Henderson. They welcomed her into their home, and that trust nearly cost them everything. Patricia Western wants people to know what happened to her family. Not for pity, but as a warning. Sometimes the greatest danger comes from the people we least suspect. This has been the story of the woman who poisoned a Western family. A twisted tale of betrayal, manipulation, and murder. Martha Henderson remains imprisoned in Colorado. Patricia Western lives privately in Oregon. Jessica Western became a victims' rights advocate. Michael Western works as a forensic toxicologist. Changes to background check laws were enacted following this case. For the Western family and all victims of trust betrayed, thank you for watching Twisted Tales TV.